What's up, y'all? Getting ready for the Rangers and the Tigers. Want to talk draft just a little bit. I'll probably get a little more in depth as the draft approaches, and it is quickly approaching. The first round will take place Sunday night. But, I understand the NBA draft, the NFL draft, a lot more popular. We're a lot more familiar with maybe the nuances, how those drafts work, what expectations are. And I just wanted to kind of lay a few things out. Obviously, the baseball draft is super unique, way different. You're drafting Division I college kids, junior college kids, community college kids, high school kids from hotbeds for high school baseball like Texas, and high school kids in the Northeast where high school baseball isn't as strong because the opportunity to play year round isn't as prevalent. I mean, it's just you're not even comparing apples to oranges to grapes to bananas. You're comparing apples to radishes to yellow cauliflower to potatoes and bacon, right? Like it's just it's so tough to do that, and there are people who have their own theories, their own beliefs that maybe you're going to find more often than not more success with a high school position player versus a college position player, or a high school pitcher versus a college pitcher, or a college pitcher versus a high school position player. And, there are certainly fair reasons as to why one might like a group versus another, but there's no right or wrong answer here. The wrong answer is not drafting the guy you believe is best for you based on your evaluations. Is there data out there to support that in a certain high school position type might play better long term, or this body? Sure, but again, if people had the answers, then the draft would be way less complicated. So the first thing is the Rangers, I think, are going to ultimately decide between a high school position player or a college pitcher. And I've gotten asked, which is the better pick to pursue? Based on that information alone, high school position player, college pitcher, it's tough to say. For instance, there are people who believe the college pitcher, especially one coming out of the SEC, is better because they've gotten tested against higher level hitting. Maybe to some people believe the SEC is akin to AA hitting. Whether that's accurate or not, I don't know. But then the other thought is, well, okay, that's fair, but the high school pitcher, you got to put them in your program from day one. Who knows what these colleges have been doing for these pitchers, where, the colleges, their goal, the coach's goal is to win, maybe a little more so than to develop every single pitcher with that in mind, in every step of the way. Now, you want to get really specific. Vanderbilt has had a great track record of producing college pitchers. So whereas maybe, say, TCU hasn't had a lot of their guys turn out to be successful big leaguers, do you weigh that Vanderbilt has had a lot more success? There are a lot of factors here. Another thing that's important to understand is that I've seen people tweet, well, it'd be a joke if the Rangers passed on a pitcher. Why? If the valuation is that Jordan Lawler or Marcelo Meyer, high school shortstops, are better long-term, then that's what you go with. You go with Lawler or Meyer. A shortstop is just as important as a pitcher, if not more. As a matter of fact, if you told me you could have your choice between franchise shortstop and ace pitcher, I'd take the franchise shortstop. And I'm not talking about the guy who's just on your team for 10 to 12 years. I'm talking about the guy who's a perennial all-star shortstop, someone who impacts the game offensively and defensively. I take that guy over the pitcher. So, I understand there's a constant thirst for pitching in general, but specifically with the Rangers. But it's also important to know that there are people who evaluate the draft who believe that Jack Leiter is no more than a 2 or a 3. That there's, he's not an ace. He's not a number one. And who knows? Right? We don't know, that those people could be wrong. They could be right. But point is, it's not like this is some slam dunk automatic ace that you're passing up. Just as Jordan Lawler and Marcelo Meyer aren't slam dunk franchise shortstops. But my point is, those two positions are probably the two most important positions on the field. And so if you're going to pass up Jack Leiter for a first baseman, maybe you'd have some issues there. If you're going to pass up Jack Leiter for a left fielder who's got no ability to play in center, maybe you'd have some issues there. But if you're passing up Jack Leiter for a guy who you believe can be a franchise shortstop, There's nothing wrong with that. And only time will tell whether or not you ended up making the right pick. One other thing I want to get to today, and there's so many more nuances and things to consider, but one more thing I want to get to. I have been asked in the vein of drafting a shortstop, why would the Rangers draft a shortstop if Trevor Story is a target of theirs this offseason? Does that take them out of the running for Trevor Story? Not at all. You're drafting a high school shortstop. That means that best case, absolute best case, this guy's a major leaguer in 3 years. And that's almost certainly not going to happen. 4 years, more likely 5 years. All right, that's probably going to happen by then. And there's also a difference between this guy's a major leaguer versus this guy's now comfortable and he's an everyday player who's performing at an everyday player's product level of production, right? Not every 21-year-old, not every 22-year-old is as good as they're going to be. Almost certainly not going to, but the guys like Acuna and Soto and Trout and the guys who are able to come up at this age, at such a young age, Tatis, and perform, those guys are not the rule. They're the exception. And there are a lot of Hall of Fame players who didn't really establish themselves until 24 or 25. And that's okay. So point being, you signed Trevor Story. Who the heck knows what Trevor Story is going to be up to in 5 years? Who knows what Jordan Lawler or Marcelo Meyer are going to turn into? Maybe one plays second, one plays short. Maybe, by that time, Trevor Story's gotten a little older. Maybe you move him to third. There are just so many unknowns. One big difference, I know in the NFL, you do draft best player available to a point, right? You're not going to draft a quarterback if you've got Patrick Mahomes. You're not going to draft him in the first round. If you've got a franchise shortstop on your team and a franchise shortstop or a guy you believe has that ceiling is available in the first round, you're drafted. Because if the Kansas City Chiefs had the opportunity to draft a quarterback, and the way the NFL worked was you draft guys and they're not ready for 4 or 5 years. You've got Patrick Mahomes. You can draft Trevor Lawrence, but you're in a world where Trevor Lawrence isn't going to be ready for 4 or 5 years. You draft Trevor Lawrence because the quarterback is that important. Same with the shortstop and same with pitching. But while, yes, you do have 5 pitchers in a rotation, you only have 1 shortstop in a lineup. Shortstops can play elsewhere. Take the Padres. They've got Fernando Tatis, and they have C.J. Abrams. He's now out for the year. But the plan was for C.J. Abrams, who's one of baseball's best prospects, and a shortstop to play center field. Shortstops are athletes. You can move them around. So just because you draft an unknown doesn't mean you don't go out and add a known commodity if you have that opportunity. That's a little bit on the draft. We'll talk more about it as the week progresses. If you have any questions, just let me know. Talk later.